All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special bonus meeting in July. This meeting has come out of basically in September, I think it was, Frank, that you emailed me to let me know that this paper was being published, newer paper. And I was very excited to read it back then. I was rereading it this weekend. And I am just super motivated by exercise research, whether it's an RCT or a review like this, when it talks about what happens to our brain and body when we exercise. I find that very motivating for myself and motivating for me to help other people do that type of exercise. And that's a question I get all the time is, what is exercise doing for me? And I'm like, well, how much time do we have? Because from the level of your cells to your neurons to your muscles to blood flow, there's just so many amazing things happening with exercise. And Frank's review article delves kind of deep into that. So I was also just going to share really quick. So Frank and I go way back. Frank, do you know which year it was that we met?
No.
Me neither.
God.
But it was like, 10 years ago, probably
Wow.
9, 8, something like that. So here's Frank. So Frank and I met at the Power Retreat in Arizona. This is us. I don't know what year it was, but it was a while ago. Um, oh, I guess I do. I'm married because that's my wedding necklace. So it is within 10 years. So it's probably like 8, 7, 8, 9 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So we met and then have stayed in touch. And I'm super excited. So after the article was published just recently, I reached out and said, Frank, will you come on and talk about your article? Because it's one thing to share these type of articles with people. For the most part, when I share actual articles that are published and people get them, it's kind of hard to read. They're kind of dense scientifically. Um, and so sometimes it's hard to read and know like what exactly does this mean for me and to kind of make your way all the way through that scientific article if you're not someone who has been in the science world or read those types of articles before. So I think it's really better if we can have someone come on and talk to us about the process, the information, and then especially being someone who's living with Parkinson's, it's not just, published work, but it's how is it meaningful for you? So I will go ahead and pull up your slides. Start at the beginning.
I just let Claire talk. Okay. Thank you for the invitation to come talk. It's been a real pleasure to talk about this paper. It took almost a year to write, and it's the longest paper I've ever written in my entire life and career. And it basically three papers, and I'm going to talk about each paper as it goes. So next slide, please. Um, what I want to do is give you a little history about me, to give you an idea of where I've been and where I've come from in terms of Parkinson's. I went to college in the early 1970s and played tennis, got a BS degree. And like a lot of people in the mid 70s, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I started teaching tennis. And at the same time, I went to graduate school at LSU, Louisiana State University. And 21, 28 were like a big time period for me. I got my master's. I stopped teaching tennis. I got my PhD in North Carolina State University and pretty much set me up for the rest of my life. At 28, I had a PhD and moved 13 miles up the road from Raleigh to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and stayed there for 40 years. And I went from the age 28 to 68, and I retired at 68. And I did everything at Chapel Hill. I was a postdoc. I was a young professor, an assistant professor, got tenure. I got promoted to full professor at the age of 45. And basically, when you get to that point, what's your life going to do right after that? And um, my focus research-wise was nothing related to the brain, from pathophysiology of how your blood clots and what causes venous thrombosis. And I was a protein biochemist, so I studied how these proteins actually interacted with each other. And because of my sister's breast cancer, I started studying cancer cell migration and had a really, really fun career. I really, really enjoyed my science. I liked the education part of it, fun training students. And when I turned 55 on a medical committee, a colleague of mine noticed that I had Parkinson's. And she didn't tell me for 3 years because of HIPAA regulations. She thought I was, hopefully thought I was getting good care. And I went to see her when I was 59 after I got my diagnosis because she was in charge of the neurology course for med school students. And we talked about it. She goes, I've known about you for 3 years. And so in some ways, I was diagnosed at 59, but I actually was noted to have Parkinson's at 55. Um, I worked for another 5 years, and at the age of 66, I transitioned to what they call phased retirement, which in academics is pretty fun to do. You go from being a full-time scientist or teacher or physician to being half-time. And you work basically just as hard as you ever did, but you only get paid for 50% of your time. And I went from having a full-time lab, writing grants, teaching med students, teaching undergrads, to just doing scholarship, thinking about Parkinson's, writing about Parkinson's, and teaching my courses. Did that for 3 years, and it's supposed to get you ready for retirement, and maybe it did. But in 2022, I retired. We moved to from Chapel Hill to Bluffton, Hilton Head Island area, and now we're only about 14 miles from the ocean, and it's really kind of nice to be down here. It's very different. So I'm in year about 17 with my Parkinson's. And I was going to have another special category here. This has been the year of transition for me for medical conditions. A year ago, I had a knee operation. I've had a colonoscopy. I've had um, my eyes worked on, had cataract surgery. I've had all this other stuff going on. My back has been injected with steroids 3 different times, my lower back. And then 9 weeks ago today, I had my hip replaced, my right hip replaced. But I'm doing great. I mean, I'm actually, a year of medical care has now turned me into the point where I can start exercising like I want to. I can start losing weight. I start getting back in shape, start doing the online power moves courses, things like that. And so that's really important for me. And that's where I am right now. A year ago, I wouldn't have been very happy. Now I'm very happy. I've also got this neck problem. I'm going to physical therapist for me and to help me try and correct my stature, my posture. And we're working on that very hard twice a week. And it's doing some good. I'm just getting tired in the afternoon. Next slide, please. Okay, that's the introduction. What I wanted to do is talk about 5 different points of this article. It's 50 some pages long. I mean, it's ridiculous. It really is a long paper. And what I would want you to do, if you, any paper you ever read scientifically, for the educational standpoint, I would always recommend reading the abstract and the introduction. Gives you an idea of what the paper is about, summarizes everything you need to know from A to Z about the paper from the abstract. And the introduction gives you some topic. Are you interested in this? And it's kind of nice to know if you're interested in Parkinson and exercise, or how exercise mediates the benefit of resisting Parkinson's disease, then this paper is pretty interesting for you. But there's 3 papers here, and I think I made a mistake. We really should have written 3 different papers and submitted them all individually. The first paper is about physical therapists and recommendations and all the different highlights of science and clinical trials for what makes a good exercise program, what tells us that exercise is really important for Parkinson's. We break it down by exercise in terms of aerobic exercise, weightlifting, neurological relationships like physical therapists dealing with occupational therapists, and then stretching and moving around, power moves, things like that, yoga, dancing, everything you need to know. It all works to make a really good exercise regime for each person. But as I say in every paper I've ever written, every person with Parkinson's is different from everyone else. And so everybody really needs their own personal program for exercise. And I think that's why you need to have somebody like Claire, somebody, a program like she's got in her organization. You really need somebody to help you organize that program, what you think you need to really improve your health in terms of exercise. So the first key point is to any paper, read the abstract, look at the introduction, and then if you want to go from there, then take off on it. The figures usually in papers, look at figure 1, look at figure 2 on this paper, and it gives you an idea of what the whole thrust of the idea behind why we spent all this time writing this paper. the importance of exercise for everybody with Parkinson's. Okay, next slide, please. All right. Now, to me, from your standpoint, I think as somebody that is interested in Parkinson's or has Parkinson's or a care partner, the first part of the paper I think it may be very valuable for you. And it's about really exercise as therapy for Parkinson's. And I recruited two different physical therapists. One was a well-established physical therapist of mine in Durham, North Carolina. Another one was a student of mine that I taught as an undergrad who went on to physical therapy school, partly because she was inspired by me a little bit, as I found out recently. And we ended up dividing up to sections. I ended up writing all parts of all three sections. But Alex wrote basically the first part of this paper, which is really exercise as a therapy. And it's really an interesting consumption of collaboration of papers because she's reviewed the whole literature. So there may be 200 or 300 papers on exercise, but in here, in about 7 or 8 pages, it's all reviewed for you to look at if you want to read it from A to Z, going back to the very beginning of the idea of exercise being good for you. A really important paper. It was published by the American Physical Therapy Association, APTA. They give their practice guidelines, and it's worth reading if you're really interested in depth and detail of what physical therapists really need to understand about Parkinson's and how to apply their knowledge for helping you get better. Part of the problem with this paper, I think other people have noted it to me in their blogs, is that you need to spend a lot of time exercising to really use exercise to ward off Parkinson's. For me, you need to exercise as much as you think you can, how much you can apply that knowledge, how much you can apply yourself and time every day, every week to exercising. If you do everything here, it's probably 3 or 4 hours a day. And I'm not sure many people could really afford that much time per day. But it's broken down into aerobic exercise, which is really important. Get your heart rate up. And I'll talk about that in the coming slides. Go to the next slide, please. Here it is. So the key point of this part of the paper was to use the recommendations to tell you if you were going to have somebody write you a prescription for exercise for treating Parkinson's, this is what you need to do. Aerobic exercise, getting your heart rate up. And we're using kind of a broad level of heart rate increase. I really think it's from 60 to 85. If you get to 60%, that's pretty good. Get to 85, that's amazing. And this is for doing something for 20 to 30 minutes, 3 times a week to get your heart rate going maximally to that 60 to 85 percentile. The American Heart Association, many of the associations that look at aging adults and their level of exercise, they want you to do this anyway. So it's not just because you have Parkinson's, it's because you're an adult and you're getting older. This is what they expect you to do every week. Things like running, Nordic walking, cycling, or rowing, things that really get your heart rate going. Whatever it does for you, that's what you need to do. That's really high value. So pick the exercise you enjoy doing. If you don't like it, you're not going to do it. That's what I've always thought. Resistance training is getting more important every day. And it's the fact that as we get older, our muscles start to atrophy and waste away a little bit. We don't necessarily have sarcopenia, but as you get older, you start to have a little wasting material, and it goes a little bit every year. So resistance training is basically weightlifting to some extent, using bands or using weights. The recommendation by different organizations is to do it twice a week, get your heart rate going 60 to 80%. That just means working from prep to prep, from going from one station to the next station, not sitting there talking and socializing, but just going ahead and working. Your heart rate will get going. Neuromotor, the third part, is the role that Claire and all the other physical therapists and other therapists that we work with take care of us, helping take care of us, helping us manage our disease is really important, whether it's dealing with balance or freezing the gait, dystonia, whatever's going on, we need experts. And this is really where they become very, very valuable. The final part of it is stretching and flexibility. And I think that's really, really essential because as Parkinson's progresses, we get stiffer, get harder to walk, harder to balance. And so almost every day, almost every hour, we need to do some kind of stretching exercise. some kind of workout, whether it's Tai Chi or power moves, whether it's boxing or dancing, some sort of exercise routine that you enjoy doing that really helps you move and really helps you stretch and works on your flexibility. So if you add up all this per day, it's hours. But what you need to end up thinking about doing is what helps you manage your disease? What really helps you get from point A to point B every day? For me, it's walking, riding a bike, playing tennis, playing golf, doing a lot of different stretches, exercise every couple of hours. I need to do more work with power moves and things like that to really help me get going. That really helps me overall in terms of my flexibility. I have enough issues. I see no problem going to physical therapists. I go to a lot of physical therapists. I've been to speech step therapy. I've had occupational therapists. They're very valuable. And if your insurance pays for it, it's really, really important to do. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so the final part of this first part of the paper was different scenarios. And Rebecca and I thought that it would be important to come up with not the ideal, the Parkinson's patient that goes on TV and does the ninja, whatever it is. We're not all outstanding athletes. Most of us are in our 60s or 70s and older. We want to exercise. So we came up with different scenarios in the paper. It may describe you, it may not describe you. And there are different problems. As you progress through this disease, things get harder and harder. You need to really have the help of a physical therapist. Maybe you need to be physically sitting down to lift weights, not standing up. All the different complications that help, but you're there, you're exercising. That's the key point. You're doing the exercise program because you want to. You want to help yourself, you want to help the disease and limit the progression. So we thought this was a really important part of the paper. And we'd never seen this before. We'd never seen anybody talk about different limitations of people and what they try to do to overcome their disease by exercising. And so carefully read these 3 or 4 pages because it's really important. You may see yourself there and how people were really able to get past their deficiencies. And it's not a deficiency. Partly it's because it's a problem we have with the disease and growing through it. And next slide, please. And the final point is the rest of the paper. The rest of the paper is a lot of basic science, a lot of biochemistry, a lot of physiology. And of course, I had to write that. And the fun part about it is I learned so much about exerkines. If you don't know what exerkines are, every time you exercise, every time you move, every time you do anything exercise related, your muscles, your kidneys, your liver, every part of your body releases these small molecules into the bloodstream. Some go to your brain, some go to different parts of your vasculature. They're there to help stimulate your body to get the benefit of exercise. So a big one in the brain is neuro-derived growth factor. And we have a lot of different studies, a lot of different exercise routines that now are measuring exerkine production. So muscles are really important. Muscles is really one of the biggest factories for making exerkines. So the more muscles you have, the more exerkines you can make. So it's important, I think, to do the aerobics, do the weightlifting, do the stretching, do the exercise. But it's the length of exercise, the kind of exercise you do that brings up what kind of exerkine you have. And part of the paper was really focused on not making, but secreting exerkines to go to your brain that become neuroprotective. So the whole idea about being neuroprotective in exercise, I think, is linked to the type of exercise you do, the class of exerkine to get released from the body, to get to the brain, to help stabilize, to help reduce inflammation, help engage the immune system, to help take over the brain, to help it resist the onslaught of the Parkinson's. So if you're interested in the biology or biochemistry or physiology, read the last 20 pages of the paper. It's really focused. It's broken down with as we age, as we exercise, as we have limitations from aging and exercise, what can we do to get past this? So it's important, I think, to think about, and of course, there's companies and people trying to make pills that have these exerkines in them, make a poly pill for exercise. So instead of doing the exercise, take the pill and it gets to your brain. Whether or not those ever make it to the market, um, they do exist in theory. They do exist in some animal models. So you can try and take, you can buy these supplements, you can try and put them together, but that doesn't really take the benefit of exercise is your cardiovascular system gets turned on, you lose weight, you gain muscle, you really gain oxygen capacity in your lungs. You really cleanse your entire body when you exercise. I don't think taking a pill would be actually give you the same benefit without exercise. So if you're interested in the rest of the paper, and your questions may come from that part of the paper, I'm happy to answer any of your questions for as long as you guys want to go for. I think that's the last slide. Yeah, I think it is. All right, we're back. What do you guys need to know? Anything?
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Frank, for that overview. So anybody who wants to unmute, feel free to unmute if you want to ask a question. And, if you didn't get a chance to read the article yet or haven't read the full thing, don't feel like your question has to be like, well, on page this and this, what about this? You know, questions can be as general, or relevant to yourself. Or if you have a particular barrier that you've experienced, feel free to share that. You also can put a question or comment in the chat if you want to as well, and I can read that. Um, as everybody's kind of thinking and feeling free to unmute if they want to, Frank, a couple things that came up for me when you were talking about it, and just, the time commitment that it might require to do all of this that is recommended.
Yeah.
One is we've been talking about the research looking at intensives recently, and there's a group out of Italy with Dr. Frazita, where they do intensives for a month. So it is 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for a month. But then basically, essentially, the rest of the year in a few of these studies, they have told people walk 30 minutes a day, keep moving, keep doing some things. But they don't have a super structured program. And even in that research, they've shown that that it's likely neuroprotective, that people are doing better a year later than they were before they did the exercise. They've shown the dyskinesia can be reduced through medication changes and exercise. They've looked at people newly diagnosed, more kind of maybe middle stage, 8 to 9 years, with dyskinesia, with freezing. And so I think for some people, you might say, well, yeah, I don't have 2 to 3 hours a day to exercise, and just feel kind of defeated, like, well, I can't benefit from it. And one, I would say, anything is better than nothing. And when you get started, you might be able to progress. And thinking about, if you think about your whole year, is there a time period, whether it's 1 week, 2 week, ideally a month, since that's kind of what the research says, but where you could dedicate and do a higher frequency, higher intensity exercise program that you don't necessarily have to commit to doing that the whole year, but you can benefit from doing that for periods of time. And Frank, like with you going to the power retreat, I mean, what would you feel like going to the power retreat where you would do 2, 3, 4 hours of exercise in a day? What did you feel going through a week like that?
I mean, to me, I think it's a matter of there are people who never exercise. I remember being the patient with you guys, some of the workshop we used to do for power moves, and y'all would recruit people as volunteers. And someone would say, "I haven't gone on the ground since I was in fifth grade. I'm not, I'm not going to do that." And hang on, I had a cat flying on me. And so, part of the problem is you've got to commit yourself to the exercise routine. It made me getting on the floor, it made me doing all kinds of exercise you've never done before. But I think anything you do is better than doing nothing. I think that's the key, is to commit yourself to doing something every day. And then, the old adage about joining the gym was if you do it every day for 21 days, you're hooked. Do it for 3 weeks. And I mean, that's the key. You've got to, first of all, you got to get started. You got to find things that you like to do. I mean, some people may love to swim. I can't stand swimming. Swimming would be really, really good for you, but that's not something you never can convince me to go swimming. Now, playing golf, if you walk, that's great. If you ride and don't walk, that's okay. You're still hitting the golf ball. You're still stretching. You're still using every muscle and joint in your body. But if you find things you like to do, and you find friends of yours that like to do it, that makes it more fun. And so whatever you do, you just got to commit yourself to that task to doing it. And I know doing it so many hours per day. Yeah, I keep saying, I retired so I could exercise. I have so much stuff to do with them, and I'm being retired. I'm making up excuses now. So I wish I could do it 2 or 3 hours a day. I think it would be kind of fun to do an hour and a half, 2 hours. That'd be perfect. To me, that'd be ideal, and that's what I'm shooting for. But don't get down on yourself if your neighbor with Parkinson's is doing 3 or 4 hours a day. Do what you can do. I think that's the key, and do what you enjoy doing. And otherwise, you won't keep doing it. A lot of people around here do boxing, and I've just never gotten into it. I'm going to keep trying and going to it. I'm going to try and go to class, and they love it. And I think I just need to go see it a couple times, actually do it, and see what I know it's beneficial. I'm not arguing that it's not good for you. It's just a matter of getting in my car, driving to the gym, which is probably 15 miles from here, and then doing it. And I'm committing myself next month, and well, it's August almost, and trying to do it a couple times a week and just see, how I feel for it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, and I think boxing can be great, but like you said, I mean, in terms of the type of exercise that has been researched, it's aerobic exercise, strength training, neuromotor, stretching and flexibility. Boxing is one way to do high intensity exercise and to work on skills, but it's
mhm.
not like it's the only way. So, I think boxing, if you get into it, that'll be great if you enjoy it, if it's a good challenge. But also, I do think Rock City Boxing has done a great job of marketing themselves. And then it's almost to a point where everybody thinks that they need to be boxing. And like, you can get all the benefits from boxing from other forms of exercise as well if you're not that into boxing.
Right.
Especially when it comes to aerobic exercise. Like as a physical therapist, what I see is boxing classes can be great, but there can be a trade off between skill and aerobic. And the more skilled something is, sometimes it's harder to get your heart rate up if it's very, focused on agility and balance and things like that. If you have to think a lot about what you're doing, sometimes that detracts from the how much physical effort you're able to put in and how much you're able to get your heart rate up. So boxing classes for some people are high intensity aerobically, but for some people they're more skill based. And then I would say that they really need a different other form of aerobic exercise. And maybe it needs to be something like walking or riding a bike, or doing kind of cardio with equipment to ideally get that type of exercise in, depending on if boxing is that form of exercise or not. And like you said, barriers. I mean, we have a lot of people who come to us after having gone to boxing programs that have shoulder injuries. And, when you have shoulder pain or an injury that really limits what you can do in a boxing class, sometimes it makes that exercise class not be the most beneficial either. And so it's another reason to have other forms of exercise that maybe don't aggravate previous injuries that someone has. Um,
Yeah.
so I,
Yeah. Yeah, I think all the papers that write up talk about exercise are really trying to get you to do the 3 hours a week, 4 hours or whatever it is per day. And I think we have to just be realistic. You guys, everyone has a life to live. And I think part of it is that for most people, the progression of Parkinson's is relatively slow. And so if you can't do it every day, do it every other day. But just doing something on a regular basis, I think that really matters. And I think if you don't exercise, you feel it when you've been exercising and you stop. I think that's what you notice. You want to go back to the gym, you want to go back and do the exercise program or do it online. Um, and so I think that's really the key. People ask me all the time, how do you do it? I don't do all much. I mean, I wrote the paper, but I'm not doing it that many hours per day. It's not feasible. And all these other clinical trials, these are people that were recruited specifically, and they had to do this exercise program every day for so many weeks, so many months. Otherwise, they dropped out of the trial. And so, it's not easy asking you to do aerobic exercise 3 days a week, weightlifting 2 days a week, something like power moves or dancing or boxing, 2 or 3 days a week. It's really hard to do. But if you do the stuff you like to do, I think that's what matters the most. You'll feel better. And I think
yeah.
that's key.
Yeah. And I think trying to do some sort of intensive at some point in time, for some people, an intensive might just be doing something every day. But for some people, intensive might mean 2 to 3 hours a day. And I mean, most of the exercise studies that have been published, the RCTs, are taking like one form of exercise, like aerobic exercise. And, the Sparks 3 trial that the phase 2 is running right now, and most previous studies that I know of did 3 to 4 hours of exercise a week because they're trying to find the balance between asking people to do as much as possible so that they benefit from it, but not asking people to do more than they will be willing to commit to. So, most of the research studies that show benefit is 3 to 4 hours of exercise a week, but it's just that they're kind of looking at different forms of exercise. And ideally, we are all doing all the types. And so then all of a sudden it adds up to a lot.
I mean, and I can tell you, playing 18 holes of golf today with 100 degrees, 108 degrees uh, heat index, that's a lot of exercise. I mean, trying to play golf when it's this hot, and even if you're riding a cart, that's really, really harsh on your body. It's not easy, and so well, it is. It's more
Question?
fun than it is anything, but I mean, it takes its toll on you, during that 4 hour afternoon when you're playing golf.
Mm-hmm. And Nancy, we'll get to your question 1 second. The one other point I was going to make too about, okay, you've got all these different forms of exercise that ideally you're doing. And that is also something that physical therapists can help with. So a class like we have online, like our high intensity interval training class, if you are able to push yourself to get your heart rate up, you can accomplish, we have a strength focused HIT class now on Fridays. You can get your strength training in, your aerobic training in, your skill-based training, your mobility. We've got kind of the warm up and cool down that have the stretching. So that's what physical therapists can do, whether it's in a class or if you work with them one-on-one and they put together a program for you, is saying, how can we get this variety of exercise in the most efficient package possible for you? You have 30 minutes a day to exercise. Okay, like we're going to get aerobic and stretching in one day, and we're going to get strength and neuromotor in the other day, and we're going to alternate back and forth. And for your strength training, we're going to use free weights and body weight support so that you're getting some neuromotor and balance training when you're doing strength, as opposed to sitting on a machine that may be good for strength training, but there's no balance, or mobility component. Very different to sit on a machine, and straighten out your knees to strengthen your quads compared to doing squats with weights or squats on an unstable surface. So I really do encourage you all to use your resources in your area, physical therapists. And then the good news is now, if there isn't someone right in your area, because of the internet, we can communicate. For any of our members, if you're doing a program and you feel a little lost in what you're doing or how you're doing it, and am I accomplishing the right things, let me know, because I'd be happy to have a conversation with you and see what you're doing now, what your goals are, kind of where you're at, and give you a little bit of guidance to try to optimize that program a little bit more.
Nancy, raise your hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello. My
Hi.
husband John and I live in Canada. We live on the west coast in BC, on Vancouver Island. And my husband John has Parkinson's, and he participates in the the Tuesday morning Power Moves program. My question is just a bit about the aerobic exercise. Well, let me turn it around the other way. So John does walks most days with his rolling walker outside. And I'm just curious, if he's not able to walk fast enough to get his heart rate up, would the walking be beneficial for some of the other categories of exercise that you have here? In other words, is it worth it? Does it provide enough sort of flexibility benefit or
Um,
balance benefit or whatever, even if it's not working for the aerobic on some
that,
days?
that's a really, really good question. I'm not sure there's a great answer for that. I think if anything to get your heart rate up is what matters.
Okay.
That range of 60 to 85% is really, really up there. I mean, you're breathing really hard. 60% you should really be breathing. You should be able to talk. But if you can get close to 60% based on your age and the calculation behind it, that's what I think is the benefit. And if you can get it for 20 minutes, that's a long time. So I really think if you're riding a bike inside or outside, however you're doing it, walking, you can get your heart rate over 100 beats per minute by walking. I think that's where the benefit is. And each person's going to be a little different. And so I think based on your question is, I think to me, that's doing enough if you do it on a routine basis. And then because as you do it, you're going to get in better shape. You'll be able to go faster or longer as you with time, I think. I mean, that's I hope that's the hope with that. That makes sense,
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that too. As a physical therapist, I'm working with a lot of people and trying to help people get their heart rate up. We have some people who are walking on a treadmill, we have a heart rate monitor on them, and they are not able to push it enough to get their heart rate above 60%. They're working on taking bigger steps, but they might, have difficulty with that. They might only be able to walk at a certain speed. Um, and my experience is that people still benefit. So to me, there is a spectrum, and that 60 to 85% is ideal. But my experience is even there are some people who never get above that 60%. And so in that case, I would call this form of exercise endurance exercise as opposed to aerobic. They're not getting into the aerobic zone, but they are still walking for longer. 20 or 30 minutes of walking is still endurance exercise to maintain or improve your endurance, depending on where you're at. So I think that there's definitely a benefit to endurance exercise, even when you're not getting above 60%. It's absolutely better to go for that walk than not go for the walk. If it's possible to go faster and get into the aerobic zone, that is great. If not, maybe considering something like getting a recumbent bike for the home so that there could be another form of exercise that might be more likely to be able to get into the aerobic zone between adding resistance and really focusing on speed. If you don't, if you get a bike and at first you're not able to get your heart rate up, don't be discouraged because that is normal. It's normal you kind of have to build your endurance on the bike because it's new and your muscles work a little bit differently than with walking. And so we kind of have a progression. First, you build up your time on the bike, then you build up your speed. There's specific research looking at stationary bikes and different RPMs and showing that, being able to pedal faster is different than pedaling slower. And sometimes on a bike, when you kind of take away the balance component that exists with walking, people are able to push it more. So we try to get faster and then we start adding more resistance and putting all those together. In many cases, people are able to get their heart rate up from the bike. And then walking is endurance. And then the other thing about walking is I would consider that under the neuromotor umbrella because walking is a skill that is extremely important to maintain. It's how we get around, and it's something that is typically affected by Parkinson's. And so for some people, their walks outside are more of their neuromotor skill. I'm upright, I'm on my feet, I'm working balance, I'm working on my walking, working on standing tall and taking big steps. So it's a little bit more of that's their skill-based exercise. And then the aerobic exercise might come from a different place, like a recumbent bike or something else. So definitely keep doing it. But if you're motivated and you want to explore, you could check and see, am I actually getting my heart rate up when I'm walking? You don't know unless you measure, and maybe you already are, and then that would be great. But if not, then I would say it would be ideal to look for, another form of exercise you could do where you do get your heart rate up.
Yeah. So, I mean, so one thing I want to bring up, it's related to what we've been talking about. If you have any kind of chronic pain related exercise, deal with it and get rid of the pain. And I bring it up for me because before I had my hip surgery, I had groin injury, lower back injury, my knee was sore, everything was out of whack because of my hip. And I had 5 or 6 different kinds of pains. I mean, it was really, really on a scale from 0 to 10, it was probably like an 8 or 9 every day. And I should have had my hip replaced a year ago. My surgeon said, you really had a lot of bad arthritis in there. And so the key is if you've got chronic pain, you're not going to exercise. You want to enjoy it while you're exercising. So if you can figure out what's causing the chronic pain, for me, it was getting a new hip. And, I have absolutely no pain right now in my leg or my back or my butt, anything. I mean, it's gone. It's disappeared. My leg is tracking right for the first time in probably 2 or 3 years. And Parkinson's we at patients with this disease, we can overestimate how much pain we've got. We seem to emphasize that chronic pain mechanism. So we still have pain, but maybe we're actually not as bad as we think, but it still can be really, really bad. And so if you have some kind of chronic pain issue or some kind of something that hinders you from exercising, get past that obstacle, try to get past it, and you'll be better off exercising. Everything Claire just emphasized really improves your quality of life. I think that's really the most important thing. If you can improve your quality of life, and help contribute to slowing down the disease progression, that's a win-win situation. Get the win at least, get to the point where you can improve the quality of your life. You're not as stiff, you're more flexible. Things will get better if you do some sort of exercise almost every day. At least try to do it every day.
Thank you. All right. Great question. Anyone else have any questions about your exercise program or for Frank?
I think I'm curious about scheduling it. How many people? I mean, so it's easy for me to do what's Rogue has scheduled or what fits into my schedule because it's at a certain time and I do it. But I'm less good at firmly scheduling things that would be helpful, runs, walks. I wonder, are people blocking? I suspect that successful people are blocking time off on their calendar and kind of preserving that time and doing it no matter what. Is that what you're doing, Frank, or is that what anybody's doing? Because I think between fatigue and a little bit of apathy and babysitting a lot of grandkids, it's really easy for me to
I mean,
just to put in my rogue classes and call it quits.
for me, I really, really think Power Moves is good for me. I think it's been really, really good for a lot of people. There is not a single therapist or trainer in South Carolina that can teach it. No one in the state of South Carolina teaches Power Moves. So by Claire's program being online, I can download a program, I can look at it, I can do it whenever I want. And that's really the important thing. I can schedule my own exercise routine based on, I like to do it when it's live, but I'm usually not available. I play golf on Monday and Wednesday. I won't be doing anything else but playing golf on Monday and Wednesday. Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'll do some sort of exercise routine. And I like exercise on the weekend. I like to go every day for something. And it's just a matter of your mindset. If you can try and make yourself make the time to do a little bit every day. And as you build up that category of exercise, it gets longer and longer. I don't know how long you guys have to drive to get to a gym. For me, I get in my golf cart and it's like a half mile up the road. You may be driving for a long time to get to Claire's gym. I don't know. Part of it is how difficult is it for you to get from point A to point B every day or every other day. Um, but the way we broke it down, the way the other categories are broken down, it really wants you to do aerobic exercise 3 days a week, weightlifting, resistance training 2 days a week. That should you can be doing those things in the same day, try and get it done in 3 days or 4 days. Claire's the expert. I'm not a physical therapist. I just been exercise all my life and really enjoyed it. So I'm just using what I've learned to help tell you guys what's been recommended. So she's the expert. She's the one to be telling you, your program, you'd be doing this for 90 minutes every day.
Yeah, and I think, Linda, it is, different for different people, but I think having some kind of goal and schedule, and whether that's something that you look at for the next week, or it's a day by day thing, or it's in the morning kind of thing. Okay, what's happening today? What am I committed to? Knowing yourself and when do you have more energy? I would say I hear most commonly that people have more energy in the morning and kind of more tired throughout the day. I also think that sometimes a movement break can be what gives you energy, though. So if you experience that pattern, sometimes going for a walk or doing a shorter power moves class in the afternoon might actually help you feel better the rest of the day. But yeah, I think it is a matter of scheduling. And if you're doing, rogue classes, like how many days a week would you say you're doing that? Like able to join live rogue classes?
Yeah, another way to look at it, I just thought about. A lot of people, I'm included, we say exercise is medicine. Think about missing levodopa once or twice a day or once or twice a week. You don't miss your doses of levodopa. You don't miss your statin, your blood pressure drugs. Think of this as a prescription to exercise to help get you better. Think about it as a regimen. If you need to do 30 minutes a day, think about it. How do you map out your week to do 30 minutes a day? Think of it as a prescription from your neurologist to say, do this every day or every other day, and come up with a strategy to try and be successful with that. Because I know when I know when I miss my levodopa dose, I'm absolutely in crap and pain, and I don't like missing it. So if you think about exercise as really being medicine, try that approach and see how important, see if you get it to be as important as it needs to be as some other aspects of your life. And maybe that might be one way to look at it. I don't know.
Mhm. I feel like 4 days a week for sure, sometimes five.
Mhm.
I and some of those days can have two classes in them, but I know I'm not still doing enough.
Well,
So,
I think, I mean, 4 or 5 days, I think is a great start. And I think it's like, I know a lot of very high achieving people through Rogue. So I think there is a balance between, having goals and pushing for more and also giving yourself credit for what you're doing. And I don't think it's helpful to like always think, oh, I need to be doing more and not give yourself credit for what you are doing. So I just think it's important to say, wow, if you're doing 4 or 5 days a week consistently, and sometimes 2 hours on those days, you are doing way better than average. That is not what most people are doing. So you are doing a great job. But then if you're like, okay, but I know I want to do more, then it is kind of looking at what does that weekly schedule look like and just looking at the rhythm of life. You might be busier in the summer with your grandkids than you are during the school year. And so it might be, okay, summer is going to be a little different. The schedule is different. I want to be available for my kids and I want to spend time with my grandkids. I will say, like, babysitting grandkids is neuromotor exercise. Like, you are moving around, you're following, you're lifting, you're problem solving. So, I think that's really good activity. And you're probably not like sitting around very much during that time. So, even though it maybe isn't structured exercise, you're still active. So, I think you get credit for that. Um, and then you may know, okay, there's going to be a couple of 2, 3 months in the summer that maybe it's going to be a little bit different. And maybe there's more sports or things happening on the weekends. And then once that calms down, when I do have a little more control over my time and I'm not needed as much, then this is what I want to add into my program. Um, and otherwise, yeah, thinking, okay, if I'm doing these exercise classes and I'm covering this, is there a specific form of exercise that you feel like you're missing? Or is it on the weekends that you want to say, I'm going to go for a walk on the weekends just to move my body? I have gotten in high intensity exercise during the week. It doesn't necessarily have to be high intensity. Having the conversations with your family and friends. With family, I think it's letting them know, like, I want to be there for you. And also, it's important for me to take care of myself. And the more that I take care of myself, the more I get to spend good quality time with you for longer. And making sure, because I know like my mom would do anything for me. And I have to be careful kind of not to take advantage of that. Because she would drop things, to help me out. And even her working here at Rogue, we're trying to get her into more exercise classes and get that happening more often. But she's so dedicated to helping us at Rogue that she just keeps working all day when she's supposed to be taking an exercise class. So having those conversations and just reminding people this is a priority. So yeah, I'm going to babysit, but can it have start at this time so I can go for a walk right before I come in? Or can it be done at this time so I have the energy to go for a walk? And with friends, saying I really want to get together. And when we get together, can it be that we go for a walk or we do something? Can you want to come over and we do some gardening? Having time that you spend with people, allowing that to be active can be really helpful too. So I think there are ways. So I do think successful people sit down and think about these things. Like it's great that you're committed and you have the structure with the exercise classes. And if you do want to do more, it's kind of sitting and thinking, what do I want to do? When could I fit that in? What communication do I need to have with those around me to help me be successful with that? Um, and also give yourself credit for everything that you're doing. And I think you're already way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's not a penalty. It's something you should be happy about doing. Some people will never enjoy exercising. That's the hardest person to get to come to the gym 3 times a week or to exercise 3 days a week. It's really a reward, and the reward is your body's getting healthier and you're doing better with your Parkinson's by exercising. You're not penalizing yourself because you just don't want to go. but you also don't punish yourself if you don't go. I mean, that makes it, you don't want to make it an evil cycle. If you don't go, you get really upset. Go when you can, be happy when you get there. I mean, I don't know what else. I'm not a psychologist either.
Yeah, I think that's great. Is there anything else? We'll wrap up in the next couple of minutes. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions or anything to share?
Could I just say thank you?
You're
I'm
welcome.
so glad to have something that gives a little bit of hope that it might stop the progression and have a way to start feeling better.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Claire,
Yes.
it's Sandra, and I would just like to ask Nancy if where on Vancouver Island they are. Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we live near Nanaimo.
Okay, I live in Victoria. I just
Live in
wondered if you were in
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. No, and I was also going to say I really appreciate in the paper having that little chart, that pyramid of the four kinds of exercise, and the just laying out a little chart and summarizing it in that way. That's very helpful, regardless of how closely people can reach that recommendation or not. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I used to work as a physiotherapist a long time ago. And we say physiotherapist in Canada. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the challenges my husband and I have is that it's hard for me to find on a continuum between supportive caregiver and zealous physiotherapist as his partner. It's it's one of our challenges. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My husband already gets that. He doesn't even have a diagnosis. I'm like, are you doing as much as you should be? I'm trying to get him because he's a pilot, so he's traveling in hotels. I'm like, just do the power moves classes with me when you're traveling. It would be great for you. So I'm working on it. So yeah, but I think there's a good balance there in being supportive and also giving people space to make some of their own decisions and know that they might not make the exact same decisions that you would.
Well, and for everybody who's got people in their lives, all of people here who have people in their lives as their care partners and supporters, it's the same issue. It's just my background's got some physiotherapy in it, that's all. But I mean, everybody's in the same boat of how can the people who care about you most support people with Parkinson's in terms of some of these things, like thinking of exercise as medicine and as important as the L-DOPA. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Frank, and sharing information about the article. I think I'll check in with you, but maybe you'll be up for having meetings like this every once in a while where we come in and pick a research article and talk about it a little bit more, because just your background and kind of ability to say, start here and look at this is really helpful too, just to talk about. And there's so many cool articles out there that I'm trying to, highlight with our research highlight. But it's cool to have somebody like you, because I'm coming from a different perspective than you are as a scientist and researcher and person who has Parkinson's. So it's a great combination, I think, of perspectives to be able to talk about all this.
Sounds good. I'll be happy to come back anytime. Yeah, I think it's really a matter of focusing on what you can do and what your family can do to help support what you want to do, and go from there. I mean, you just got to start.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. Hope that was inspiring and you're motivated to do a little movement now or do a little more tomorrow, and look at your plan and what you're doing and what your week looks like and make some little tweaks there, or big tweaks.
All right. You guys take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you
great
so
afternoon,
much.
evening, everyone. Bye. See you later.
Bye. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Frank.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.